First of all, these are four of the best that I've had come through my class. I am honored and privileged to have them come back to talk to you guys about money. This is one of my three personal finance classes with Miss Jacoby. It's a really good group of kids, really, really smart, and I cannot wait for them to hear from you guys about what you have to say about it, and how you got to this point and that kind of stuff. So why don't we start off with a quick introduction from everybody, and then we'll go into questions. The questions we set up are for everybody, and then if we have time at the end, there were specific questions for each of you guys. So, Sabina, why don't you start us off, please?
Yeah, sure. Hey, everyone. So I'm Sabina Levine. I was the class of 2009. Right after graduation, I went to NYU, where I studied marketing and econ. Right after school, I worked in finance and marketing. So I worked at BlackRock, and then at E-Trade, so like an online broker.
If they would turn off the light. Sorry, Sabina.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. I decided to go back to get my MBA. So I was at Wharton, did my MBA, and then I graduated from that, and now currently work at Apple as a product manager.
Can you explain what a MBA is real fast?
Yeah. Yeah, so an MBA is the Master's in Business Administration, which sounds kind of boring, but I swear that it was a really, really good experience. I just wanted to get, it's just a grad degree for anyone who's interested in anything kind of business related. So if you want to manage people, if you want to work in finance, if you want to work in consulting, and I think we have a consultant here too, that's why you go back and get your MBA. So it's just more education, and it's super valuable.
Thank you, Sabina. Sam, how about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I graduated from OHS in 2013. After OHS, I went to the University of Pennsylvania, where I studied economics and political science. And after that, I spent about 4 years working in strategy consulting. So like Sabina was just talking about, it can mean a variety of things. Most of the work I did was related to the healthcare industry, advising companies that were interested in buying or selling other healthcare companies. We came in and did basically independent evaluations of if that was attractive. And then this fall, I started my MBA at Columbia Business School. And I guess happy to talk about this, but I'm actually sponsored by my prior consulting firm, which means that they will pay for my tuition if I go back to them for about 2 years after I finish the degree. And so I'm using the MBA mostly to actually kind of test out other types of career options in the healthcare space.
Just real quick, Ms. Bacon, if you can turn off the presentation, I would appreciate that. Thank you so much. So Sam and Sabina have the MBAs, or you're working on it, Sam. I'm sorry. Rodney, why don't you go next, and then Vinny, you guys can explain if you have MBAs and that kind of stuff, please. Thank you.
So I do not have an MBA. My name is Rodney Rebello. I went to school with Sabina. We were the same year, 2009. I went to SUNY Binghamton. And I guess my career really started in Mr. Chaff's personal finance class. So I work in investment management. I analyze companies, publicly traded companies for a living. I spent a couple different, worked at a couple different firms, hedge fund, and now a large asset manager, and effectively just analyze companies all day and figure out which companies we should invest in and which to avoid. But I realized I had the interest in Mr. Jaff's class, and then realized it was something I really was interested in. And, you should want to enjoy what you do for a living because you do it for a long time. And once I realized that there was a job doing that, it kind of took off from there.
Back in the day, Rodney, there was no SUNY personal finance. It was just regular economics, though, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have SUNY.
We definitely.
Sorry, I would have taken
And,
it
and
probably.
just for the record, Sabina came to me when she was a senior and said, Jaffis, I want to take AP macro. I'm like, Sabina, we don't have AP macro. She's like, don't worry about it. I'll teach myself. You can just kind of be the just be there. And I'm like, okay. She taught herself, got a 5. I thought that's a funny story. Rodney, are you thinking about an MBA?
No, I guess there are a lot of reasons why you get an MBA, but for me in particular, I'm in the industry I want to be in, and so the experience you get on the job in many cases is more valuable than just taking 2 years away from working to get an MBA. It's valuable in a lot of different functions, and I don't mean to dissuade anyone from doing it, but I was able to land in a place I wanted to be in. So just building up the work experience, so you save money, time, and there's less of a need.
Awesome. Thanks, Rod. Vinny, please.
Hi, guys. Vinny Sotil. I was class of 2014 from OHS. My story is actually pretty similar to Rodney's. I do not have an MBA. Out of college, I went to the University of Scranton. I actually taught in New York City for 3 years in Manhattan. And while I was doing that, I kind of self-taught myself how to be an investor because I had always been very interested in the stock market, starting in the days of Mr. Jaffe's class. So, definitely pay attention. The stuff pays off. I actually had Microsoft as my stock for our stock project back in senior year of high school. And if you had invested in Microsoft back in 2014, you'd be doing pretty well right now. So that's definitely where, spiked my interest. So I kind of just taught myself, just reading tons of books and, online. So I basically am a private investor now. So I'm kind of doing all the same things Rodney was talking about, except, I'm my own boss and I'm picking companies I want to invest in. I'm invested in Tesla, Apple. Those have been, some of my best performers. If you guys watch the news, I'm sure you're always hearing about those two. And then I also started a YouTube channel about 2 years ago where I now basically just discuss, my views on investing and, personal finance, how you can retire a millionaire, things like that, with some easy steps. I know Jaffis is probably always telling you guys, just invest in the S&P 500. And that'll definitely get you there. It takes time, but the younger you start, you will build up a nice nest egg. So I basically, just talk about companies I'm interested in now, and I get to research and do whatever I really want every day.
Amazing stuff, and I've actually been a guest on his YouTube channel. He's just doing amazing things, and you don't have a finance degree, right?
No, I'd considered it, but I really I taught myself. There's so many books out there that you can read and really, I think, learn everything. I've taught myself a lot more useful things than what I, learned from my degree. Obviously, I was actually poli-sci as well, like Sam, political science major in undergrad. But, there's definitely skills you gain from college. I learned how to do critical research, deep research and thinking critically, because when it comes to investing, you obviously, you can look around, oh, everyone has an iPhone, maybe Apple's a good investment, and that's a good place to start. But there's a lot more to it. You have to read balance sheets. You have to really deeply understand the companies you're looking at. And that takes a lot of research, which I definitely picked up a lot of those skills, in college, writing, long research papers on, political science and history type topics. So a lot of it, I think translated over pretty well.
Amazing stuff. Thank you so much. I'm looking at this screen, and the talent on the screen, of course, minus me, is just simply amazing. And the fact that the four of you have come through my classroom, I'm privileged and I'm honored. So thank you so much. We have a question coming from one of our terrific students from this personal finance class. His name is Chris. What would be a good way to make connections with big companies like Apple and Citibank? Like if they wanted to get into these kind of big companies. So Sabina, you're at Apple now. Why don't you start, please?
Yeah. There's so many different ways you can do it. So especially in college, that's where I really started to lean in, and I looked to see who worked at the companies that I was really excited about and who from my undergrad was working there. And because you have that little bit of a connection, every time I used to reach out to random people sometimes, and literally the only thing we had in common was our undergrad degree. And I feel like 95% of the time someone would respond to be like, yeah, sure, I'll talk to you. And then once you start talking to more and more people, after you talk to one person, you can always ask, is there anyone else I should talk to? Do you know anything else about these other topics? And you kind of grow your network from there. But going to undergrad, or even just seeing like if anyone from Ossining is at Apple, which like I am, there's another guy I know who's like 2 years older than me, he's at Apple. So like if you have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out. I think the one thing for me was that knowing that like what's the worst that can happen, someone ignores you. That's not a big deal. Like really nothing bad is going to come out of this. And I think that just is what empowered me to just start networking kind of on my own.
Amazing advice. The worst they can say is no, or just go past the email. That's amazingly said. Rodney, why don't you go next on that, because you are working for big companies too.
Yeah, one thing I would advise, just before you think about doing that, just to understand that big companies like that are, as you said, Chris, very big. There are a lot of different jobs within those companies that do not do the same thing. Citigroup has so many different branches and divisions that they're totally unrelated to each other. Same thing with Apple. And so, I think sure, reach out to whoever you feel comfortable with. And, as Sabina and Mr. Jaffa said, if they ignore you, they ignore you. Don't worry about it. It's nothing personal. They were just busy. They forgot. They missed it, whatever. Just be persistent. But, actually just try and, before you take someone's time, it would be, I think, in your interest to understand why exactly you're contacting them. They're not just going to turn around and say, hey kid, come get a job. You have to kind of understand why you want to work there, what you want to do for them, and get specific, and then start reading about that particular role, news and developments that apply to that particular role within that company. And I think that somebody would take you more seriously if you were more catered. You came to them with a catered interest and request.
Okay, Sam, Vinny, you guys want to chime in, or you want to go to the next one and you guys can start?
Yeah, I'll just add that, like Rodney said, there's a lot of different jobs within that company. There's so many different things you can do, whether you want to go the engineer route, whether you want to go into sales, whether marketing, like there's so many different fields that encompass that company, right? So you can do a lot of things. And the other thing I would add is, you can also kind of get an idea, the industries of the future right now. What's big is obviously like electric vehicles. So like if that's something you're passionate about, look into companies like that, or artificial intelligence. Like all the big companies are now starting to work on that. Cybersecurity is huge, and these are very lucrative professions. And it also will give you a lot of options for what you can do within those big companies if you wanted to work at, say, Apple or Citigroup.
Thank you. So Sam, why don't we move on to the next question? We'll start with you, okay? Khalib asks, what is one thing you learned in personal finance when you were younger that might be able to help you now that you're in your 20s, and you guys, Rodney, Sabina, you're in your 30s now? Oh my God.
Yeah, we
anyway,
just turned 30.
Yeah, I mean,
all right, Sam, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is going to sound somewhat simplistic, but obviously I was thinking about this kind of in the days leading up. I also did, for context, I did Fed Challenge with Mr. Jaffis back in high school, which was like more focused specifically on the Federal Reserve's policy. And I think one of the things that I really took away that I still think about to this day is how to read the news and read the news frequently. I can't understate enough how much like the need to be informed and have a perspective, just to tag along from some of the feedback that all the other folks on the panel gave previously. When you go and build a connection with someone, try to build a connection with someone, or you're asked to contribute to something at work, the more senior you get, the more you're expected not just to be someone who's executing, but really to have a perspective. And I think, in terms of the finance and economic side of things, I kind of trace back to OHS my ability to not only read the news critically and look for news critically, but also just to be interested in it. And so, I would say as you're going through the personal finance course, or if you go through another course where a specific industry comes up at OHS, if you come across something that you are passionate about, chase it down and see see how much you can learn about it, and how much and whether that passion is genuine, because you're going to be working for many, many years. And so, the hope is that you enjoy what you're doing.
That's amazing advice. And the common themes that I've heard from every roundtable so far: internships, connections, and find something you love. And that's so well stated. And Rodney, I think you said it before, you're working for a really long time. Find something you love. Thanks, Sam. So, Sabina, you want to chime in? Vinny? Whoever.
I guess one thing that I think is really, really important, and I'm sure that you've mentioned it before, but I feel like it just doesn't get appreciated, is just what compound interest is. And, Albert Einstein called it, I think, wonder of the universe. And so, an easy exercise to understand the power of it and how it relates to why you should invest early is, if you just in a, spreadsheet or, by paper, or you just, start out with $1,000 and grow it by 10% every year, and just do that for, say, 20 years. And then, so essentially you're saying if you have $1,000 today, you invest $1,000 today. What happens if you grow that 10% each year on top of itself for that period? And then, but then say you don't want to start investing today, you start in 5 years. So in 5 years, say you just start it there, then say you don't invest for 10 years. So your starting point is today, 5 years, 10 years, and then the last scenario, 15 years before you start investing. At the end of 20 years, the numbers are in vastly different places, because the earlier you start, the bigger the amount grows on top of itself. 1,000 becomes 1,100 in the first year, and the second year it becomes 1.2 thousand. And then in year 20, it becomes 6.8 thousand. And if you started after year 5, it's 4,000. If you started after year 10, it's 2,500. If you started in year 15, it's 1,600. And so, that is, I think, a very underappreciated aspect of investing in personal finance, that, it's one of those things that's hard to understand until you see it on paper. And it just kind of blows your mind in the sense of where your money could go if you start saving and investing earlier versus, if you just choose to not do it because of, ignorance or lack of interest, or just no one to kind of tell you these things.
Amazingly said. And we start with that in personal finance. Day number 2, right? We column A, column B, right? So and everybody in here is shaking their heads. And that's so well said. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to add to that, or we'll move on to the next question, and we'll start with you.
Really quick piggyback off that. Everything Rodney just said is extremely important. The sooner you understand that and you apply it, you'll get ahead of 90% of the people in the world. It's really true. I've heard it's, compound interest, the 8th wonder of the world, I think it's been called too. And the sooner you start, like Ronnie said, even if you could just make 10% a year, you may not know what that means. You may not know how to get 10% a year, but even just something as simple, like I'm sure Japheth tells you guys to invest in the S&P 500, it goes up on average maybe 8 to 10% a year. So even if you don't want to pay attention to the stock market, it all helps, keeping up with the news, like Sam said, you need to have a perspective on things. But even if you just want to almost put it on autopilot, by putting away very small amounts of money consistently, and you just put in the S&P, let's say, and you just let compound interest do the work, in 20, 30 years, you will have millions of dollars. And I'll add to that, I learned all this in Japheth's class. Like you said, personal finance, investing in a Roth IRA, you will let that money grow tax-free. So that's where I got started with that.
Well, I might have introduced you guys to the concepts, but you guys have taken it to another level. So it's not about me; it's about you guys, and it's about this class that is asking these amazing questions and has an amazing future ahead of them. So let's get to the next question. Thank you, guys. Sarah asked, what aspect of college helped you best prepare for the real world? What aspect of college best prepared you for the real world? Or did college prepare you for the real world?
I personally think it did, like, in two ways. One, like, I could figure out, like, depending on which class and how interested I was like, okay, I want to do that. So, like, for me, I was like less interested in, let's say, my like accounting classes, but I was super interested in marketing. It was just one of those things that I picked up right away, and I was like, wow, like this is really awesome. Like I'm so like excited, which sounds really dorky, but like I was super excited to go to marketing class. I had some really good marketing professors. So figuring out like what field, because there's a lot of options out there, but figuring out what field that I wanted to go to, that was one big thing in college. And then the second thing, internships. Like I think for me personally, I interned I think every single year of undergrad. And it was just one of those things that I realized I kind of learned better on the job. So that I think was invaluable because that just helped me realize like, oh, you know what, maybe working at a startup is like not my thing. Oh, I want to work for like a large company or working in like this department. Like it's okay, but like I really like working there. And that experience I think is invaluable. And especially when you're in college, you can try stuff out. If you work somewhere or if you intern somewhere just for 3 months, that's totally fine. And that's your time to be able to explore and learn what you like and don't like.
Even if it's unpaid, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So unpaid ones, they're still a good experience, no matter what. And just adding that as a line on your resume, I think says a lot.
Sam, why don't you take it next? Because I know you've done a bunch of different things in college, and now you're getting your MBA.
Yeah, it's funny. I always think of what my parents say where before I went to college, they always described college as learning how to learn. And my path in college to the career I have had thus far was not a linear path. I thought I wanted to work in tech and then maybe finance, and ultimately I landed on consulting. Within that, specifically focused on kind of like the business of healthcare. And it took till well into college to kind of discover that that's where I wanted to go. I think, I was, like I said, an econ and poli-sci major. Do I specifically use anything that I learned in my international trade class or in my class about the American electorate? Not necessarily, but what I think I learned in college through both classes and, to Sabina's point, internships, is what kind of tasks or skills I liked and what kind of tasks or skills I was actually pretty good at. And so I think it's important to, I didn't have like a perfect GPA in college. I'm not arguing that, you should not worry about your grades in college. You should always worry about them. They're always going to come back to you and be important. That being said, I think that you're going to see that there's a group of people in college who may take like easier paths because there's an easier way to get the same number of credits toward your diploma. It's not as fixed a curriculum as high school. And I would just urge you to push yourself outside of your comfort zone within a certain extent, because that's really how you're going to find out, something you liked versus didn't like. And that's, for example, how I discovered that I actually, liked political science, something I thought I never would like, and kind of got down this path toward actually liking healthcare policy.
Amazing advice, and I love the fact that you're going out of your comfort zone, but you didn't have a 4.0. I'm very disappointed in that.
Sorry.
All right, so So Zoe asked, did you intern anywhere in college? And do you have any advice on for the high school kids, for the seniors, or a college kid getting internships? And then after this question, I think we'll do the individual questions because we're running out of time. It's only 41 minutes. Go ahead. Vinny or Rodney, maybe, to start?
Yeah, I think everything that was just said is all great stuff. And also, it's just like the more you do, trying different internships, if you think you might be interested in a field, there's no better way than to get out there and see what it's actually like. You think you want to be a doctor, like go shadow a doctor, do internships like that, get you in that setting. Because at the end of the day, yeah, this is something you're going to be doing potentially for 30 years. You want to make sure you like it. And that also means, if you're unsure, you don't need to jump into things quick. Like I went into college, I was undecided. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I went from, education to I became a poli-sci and history major. I thought I wanted to do law school maybe. And then I was all over the place. But it's like Sam said, he's going for his business MBA, but there's a lot of things you can do with that outside of just how you would traditionally think about, business in the traditional sense. You can get into healthcare. There's jobs in all these different fields. So, the more you experience, the more you can kind of curtail that to, specifically what aspect you like, what field you want to be in. So I would say, yeah, like don't limit yourself. And the best way to see what you like is just get out there and, see what those fields are like.
And then a bad internship is still a good learning experience, right? It might make you cross off something on your list that you thought you might have liked, and it turns out you don't.
Yeah.
Rodney?
Yeah, I mean, I'd go back again and reiterate the advice we gave when we opened, which was, figure out as best you can what you want to do, and find people that family, friends, neighbors, alumni, college alumni. Most colleges have career service offices that their job is to account for where alumni are and who does what, and use that resource. But the other thing I'd also reiterate is just using Citigroup or Apple as an example. If you reach out to one of those people, you want to try and understand how you can get that person to care about you, how you can get that person to take an interest. And there are two very different paths that happen. If I get an email that says, hey, I'm so and so, I'm interested in Citigroup. I want an internship or some variation of that. There's another path for where that email comes through and it says, hey, I see that you went to this college, or I go here too, or I went to Austin High School. I know you did too. I see that you work, or I know that you work in Citigroup on their stock trading floor. I am interested in pursuing that type of a career. I am 18 or 17 or 19, whatever. I'm interested. Do you have any advice for me? Do you have some time that we can speak on the phone? One of those things is very specific and appeals to your heartstrings, in the sense that everybody started somewhere at some point. And so if someone sends me an email like that second one, I might think to myself, hey, that kind of sounds like me. I want to help this guy or this girl. But if you get the first email, it's kind of like, now you have to do work to help this person. And, it almost sounds like a spam email where it's just like, hey, I want an intern, so it's your response, your hit rate on who actually reaches back to you changes if you can just think about how to present yourself and show that you're worth their time in some form.
Terrific advice. So we got about 10 minutes, guys. There's one question for each of you specifically, and then I'd like to end up with your best advice, to the kids, seniors in high school today, or you talking to yourself as an 18-year-old kid at Austin High School. What would you give your best advice? But keep it within a minute so that everybody can get a chance to talk. Like I said, I wish we can talk forever. All right, so let's start with Rodney. You just talked, so let's start with Sabina. Lorenzo asked Sabina, how important were the classes you took to figuring out what you like? Do you think you would have figured out your life without those classes, both in high school and college, maybe in grad school? Great question, Lorenzo.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. My classes had a really big role in figuring out, what I ended up liking. So like Mr. Jaffis just mentioned, I took his personal finance class. I realized that hey, economics and finance is something that I'm actually really interested in. And you can just see, there's certain classes, I think everyone knows, where you just have a spark. You're like, I actually am interested in this. I want to learn more. I want to work hard and really lean and figure out which those classes are. So in high school, someone mentioned, it's a little bit more structured on you got to take this, you got to take that. You have a little bit of leeway. But in college, depending on the one that you go to, you have a whole wide world of all different classes. So take as many classes like across like all the disciplines that you think you're interested in. So for me, I thought I was into economics, finance, and marketing. And once I took that marketing class, I was like, ooh, that's the spark that I need to figure out what, like area that I wanted to focus on. And picking that class and then taking internships in marketing and social media and advertising and things like that, that's what ended up helping me figure out later on of like, okay, I really want to work in marketing, but I also want to work in marketing at a financial firm, which is something that's like a little bit unusual, but it actually blended together my loves of finance and marketing. And I wouldn't be able to go down that path had I not taken some of those classes to realize like, hey, this is really what I want to do.
Well, when you were in high school, you were in science research, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you could have went down that path. You could have become a doctor. You could have went to law school. You
Yeah,
could
yeah,
really
yeah.
have went in any direction that you wanted, and you chose marketing and finance. And are you happy with that decision?
Yeah, no, I'm really happy with that decision. So right now I'm working in tech at Apple, so a little bit further away from the finance part. I have like some marketing elements, but at the end of the day, like I know what I'm really passionate about is like personal finance. So in the future, I was thinking about moving teams to go back into finance. So this is one of those things that, yeah, I mean, those senior year classes and the freshman year classes, they just have impacted my life. What is it, like almost 10 years later, more than that at this point, 15 years later, which is insane to think about. Yeah.
Thank you. Sam, let's go to you next. Jacob asked, it's clear you went to very prestigious schools. Do you personally think it matters where to go to college to complete an undergraduate degree? Great question.
I mean, it certainly helps get you your first job, but I think that once you're in that job, it's completely up to you. So just from if you're looking to work at like a big company, for example, they come on campus they came on campus when I was an undergrad. There's like direct recruiting pipelines. And that's certainly very helpful. But I think after that, first year or so out of college, you know, it's kind of how you perform in that job. And people don't necessarily give as much weight to where you went to college or what your what your GPA was in college as they do to the appraisals that your colleagues give you in that job. Because I think we've talked about this a little bit, but the things that you learn in class in college are not necessarily exactly what you're going to be doing day to day. And once you're in that job, you need to be able to not only conduct a great economic analysis or financial analysis, but start to like manage people and manage the outcomes of specific projects. So hopefully that answers your question.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. All right, Vinny, a question for you, and then Rodney, I think we'll start with you about maybe the best advice you would give your 18-year-old self or kids in high school now. So, Vinny, a question from Jason was, you're talking about you make money from the stock market now and stuff like that. Let me find it. How do you plan just in case the stock market crashes? Because you're always hoping to make money long term, but of course the stock market's going to crash every now and then.
Right. So that's a really great question, and I think the stock market it's all about you're taking a calculated risk essentially. There's a lot of things you can do to mitigate risk, right? If you buy the S&P 500, the 500 best companies in the world or in the United States, right? As long as the United States exists and is relevant in the world, the S&P 500 continues to go up over time. In the short term, yes, there can be market crashes, and there will be. There tends to be one. It's impossible to predict, but about once a decade we get a big correction. As you just saw, obviously COVID caused the entire market to very quickly crash a lot, and then it quickly recovered. There's a lot of reasons for that that we could probably talk about another day. But the point is, yes, you do have to be prepared at all times, because if you're investing in the S&P 500, like I said, that's what I have a significant amount of my investments are in. And I kind of tend to, even more as I move forward. Kind of the more you make, the more conservative you probably become, right? So the S&P 500, yes, it's going to have a couple of years. Let's say over the next 10 years, the returns look like this. It averages, 8%. One year it gets 10%. The next year it loses 5%. The next year it makes 20%. So after a 10-year period, you're going to be up much more than, those couple loss years will be largely offset. So over long periods of time, you make money with the S&P 500, right? That's really like the best way to go about it. And that's the key, though, is you have to, I'm a long-term investor. There's people who do day trading and all kinds of other stuff. I'm not really into that. But if you have a long-term time horizon, let's say, I'm 25, I'm buying the S&P 500 and I have a 20, 30-year time horizon, the S&P 500 will absolutely be higher, by then than it is. If you're just looking 1 or 2 years out, yeah, anything can happen. It's impossible to really know in the short term. So that's what I would say to that. There's a lot you can do to, mitigate the risk, but yes, you do also need to be prepared. So, that might mean I keep, let's say 10 or 20% of my total, assets in cash so that I'm prepared, if the market does crash, now I can buy it at the low, and that's how you really, make even more money over time.
Great advice, and we talk about that all the time. This class I co-teach with Deborah Jacoby, and we always talk about the S&P long term, and we kind of tell them if you want to take chances, risks every now and then with cryptocurrency or penny stocks, we're okay with that as long as you can plan to lose that money, So that's great stuff. Rodney, why don't we start with you and give them or give your 18-year-old self your best advice now?
Yeah, there's a lot of things I guess I would say just to keep it concise and clear. I guess I would say that, figure out what interests you and learn about it. And it might not be something that fits neatly in a class in high school or in college. And many times there isn't. There might be something adjacent to it, but don't say, oh, it's not offered, I can't, I have to do something else. Just don't, if you want to do something, don't accept no for an answer. There's a wealth of resources that grows larger and larger every year with the internet and just what technology enables you to get access to. And, self-education, I think, is a very high quality form of education, and you're doing it because you want to do it. And so, find out what you want to do. It goes back to what I said before, where it's like, life is, you spend a lot of time working. And so you really want to do what you enjoy doing, and don't view it as a job. You view it as something you enjoy. And it's best to start thinking about that sooner versus later, so you can figure out how you can work towards it and get to where you want to be. Yeah, it's really just, the world is a really cool place, and it's a shame if you didn't take the time when you were younger to explore all of the different avenues it has to offer you. Things you want to do, places you want to live, what you want to do with your life, and what you want to get out of it. And the best you start thinking about it and take initiative to pursue it, the better off you'll be.
Amazing. You guys at your age are so far ahead of where I was, and the advice you give is just priceless. Let's finish up with Sam. Or Sam or Sabina, whoever wants, or 30 seconds from each of you, your best possible advice.
I have a quick one, just given this panel is all about money. Finance is not historically known for having the best work-life balance of all careers. And I'm going to put consulting under that umbrella, which is what I did. And so I would say, it's easy to, when you're, in your early 20s, just completely throw yourself into it. But you need to make time. You need to continue to make time for yourself and your own personal goals as well as your professional goals. And especially in like a professional services environment where the pace is really quick and you're working for another client, so you're always trying to kind of make them happy. No one's going to advocate for that time except for you. And that took me, several years to learn. But it's really important if you want to do it in the long term.
Simply amazing. Guys, we are out of time. The bell rang, unfortunately, because I want to talk to you guys forever. The five of us should start a hedge fund. I will work for you for the rest of my life. You guys are truly four of the best I've ever taught And I am so thankful that I've had the opportunity and privilege to have taught you guys and to have you be through my classroom. Thank you. You are fantastic. And I'll get back in touch with you via text after.
Thank you, Japhis. We learned from because we had the best
Yes.
teacher.
Exactly,
Ditto.
exactly.
It's a great thing you started doing here, Mr. Jaffis. These alumni days have taken different iterations over the years, but the school and students should be thankful for your efforts in doing this. And I
Totally.
mean, I think we all wish that somebody put this together for us in such a formal fashion.
Thank you, man.
It's great. And I
This is awesome.
guess we
Definitely.
probably wouldn't be here doing this if it was any other teacher. So I think it says a lot about Mr. Jaffis.
Thank you, Rod. Thank you, Rod. There's one final question from Jake, who already asked a good question. So
It's more of like a.
yeah, come in.
Hey guys,
That's Jake.
how's it going?
You don't want to know, Jake. Go ahead.
Okay, wait. Is this being? It's just about my. I wanted to ask about my sister because I know that. Oh my god. Rodney, hey, how's it going? My
Hey.
sister was.
Samantha Miller.
Yeah, I was.
Oh, yes.
Samantha, and she was like, "Oh, you used to be good friends with Rodney," and I just wanted to like. Yeah, I was just like asking about her because I was just I thought it was cool.
So,
Yeah.
so nothing to do with money. He just wanted
Yeah, I know. I still
a shout out.
No, I still appreciate your you guys coming in and doing this, but I just wanted to ask you guys about him.
Yeah.
And I know Sam is cousins with Zoe, one of her good friends. So.
Yes.
Yeah,
So-
I just saw her last weekend for Passover, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So.
All right, guys. Well, we're gonna sign
All
off.
right.
You're the best.
Cool.
Thank you,
Okay.
Japhis.
Tell Samantha I said
Thank
hi.
you.
Bye.
Bye.